Okay folks, we're back here with the SR916 hand priming tool. Now when you first open the box, you'll notice two bags. One of them will say new on it, if you can see that. And then the other one will have no markings. These are the new and improved priming pins. One for a large rifle primer and one for a small rifle primer. The old ones are a little bit smaller in diameter. Smartreloader discovered that by making the pins a little bit larger in diameter, the operation is a little bit smoother and more efficient. So let's go ahead and I'm going to test this on a 204 Ruger, which is a small rifle primer for a centerfire rifle. So essentially, you have the hand priming tool. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this hand priming tool. If you notice, this is made out of a cast aluminum construction. A lot of the other hand priming tools on the market are made out of plastic, which plastic is fine for some applications, but when you're talking about priming cartridge cases, it requires, I think, a little more force than what plastic can handle over time. So I'll tell you what, this is a pretty robust clamp fixture, and I'm very impressed with that. The other nice feature about this kit is that it actually comes with two primer slash flipper trays, and that is very nice. Most of the other kits only come with one. If you reload a lot like I do, you can fill up over 100 primer in one of these little trays, and if you fill up double, then now you're not being slowed down by having to keep on refilling trays. Now you have over 200 at your disposal. So let's go ahead and get this all set up and working. Essentially what you want to have is, you guys know what this is. That's just a shell holder. This is specifically for my 204 Ruger. It's a number 15. And essentially what you want to do is take your shell holder and insert it, I don't know if you can see that, on that little piece right there. Insert it until it goes down in all the way, fully seat it. And I like to turn mine at about a 45-degree angle. It makes it for easier and faster to get the brass into the shell holder. So now that goes in. Make sure that's seated all the way. And then you want to insert it. If you notice the orientation, you want to insert it this way. Okay, pretty straightforward. We'll just go ahead and snap that in place. Make sure it's fully seated. And then, I tell you, before you drop the pin in, that's your priming pin. See how that goes up like that? What I like to do is get the primers in place. So you just take that cover off. And for our purposes, I'll just put in a few primers in there. We don't need to fill it up completely. Just put 2 primers in there. So you just want to drop the primers in there. Now, as you notice, just by luck, they ended up in the right orientation. But the way these primer trays work, I don't know if you can see, there's a bunch of concentric grooves. And essentially, all you do is shake it. And just the grooves actually cause the primers to flip right side up. So let's go ahead and put the cover back on place. Okay, got the cover back in place. And then notice you can, there's three of these locks here. You want to rotate that slightly just to lock it in place. Make sure they're all on. Just like that. And then you just want to slowly tilt. You want to slowly tilt the priming tool back toward the shell holder. And we'll just go ahead and, before you do that, of course, you got to put your pin in. So let's just drop the pin straight down in there. And then you want to tilt that slowly so the primer falls in there. Okay, so the primer has fallen in there. I don't know if you'll be able to see that on the... I probably won't be able to, but trust me, it's in there. And then you take your empty brass, just insert it in the shell holder, and then you just, essentially all you're doing is just clamping this. Apply moderate force. You can feel it seat, and there you have it. Pretty simple. The reason why a lot of people are going to these hand priming tools is primarily for feel. You know, you would think that priming is probably one of the least critical steps in reloading, but in actuality it's probably the most critical step in reloading. I'll show you an example. I actually learned this almost 25 years ago when I first started reloading. The number one cause of misfires is that people have been priming and not seating the primer fully. Essentially, what you want, we can take a set of calipers. I don't know if you've ever noticed on your calipers, yeah, the end actually sticks out a little bit. You can measure the depth of certain objects, and in this case, we're going to measure the seating depth of the primer. So all you want to do essentially is just, what I do is extend that little piece out right there, and then just bring it down on the primer slowly until it bottoms out on the base of the case. And if you look, it's approximately between 2 and 3 thousandths of an inch seating depth, and that is perfect. Okay, if you seat your primers less than 2 to 3 thousandths seating depth, you are running the great risk of causing misfires. Essentially, what happens if you look at a primer, what you have, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that, but if you ever looked at a primer closely, it looks like there's a triangle shape in the center, and that's the anvil, okay? And what happens is that anvil has to have a slight crush fit on the inside the primer pocket. What happens if guys are seating their primers shallow using a typical reloading press, because a reloading press is so hard to get a tactile feedback on how much pressure or force is to seat that primer. What happens, they'll have several primers that are seated at, let's say, 0 thousandths to 1 thousandth seating depth. And what happens is when the firing pin strikes that primer upon firing, the primer moves forward slightly, but then all the force that the firing pin has exerted is not enough to crush the anvil against the primer chemical compound to cause ignition. And so that's why these hand priming tools are so critical, because you have a better tactile feedback on how much force to exert. And once you do, it only takes maybe 5 or 6 before you start realizing how much force to exert. Now, speaking of force, one important aspect you want to think about, I spoke to you about earlier, is that some of the other hand priming tools that are similar to this have been known to break because they were made out of plastic. And I'll guarantee you, with these priming pins, you are not going to have that issue. This is essentially cast alloy steel with a solid steel pin, and you're not going to have that problem. So anyways, I think that's it for the Smartreloader SR916 priming tool, hand priming tool. It's a very nice device, and I've got my work cut out for me. I'm planning on reloading today, and as you can see, I've got 50 204 Rugers. I've got 3 primed, but I'll tell you what, in no time I will have all these cases primed. I'll probably say less than 10 minutes. So anyways, until next time, I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you again.